Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again, and thanks for tuning in for this month's edition of Why You Should Play. Today I'm going to talk about why you should play 2nd edition Traveller from Mongoose Publishing. Now, full disclosure, we're going to be looking at a couple of books which pretty much make up the core rules for 2nd edition Traveller from this starter set. Now, there is an update to the rules which came out late last year. I don't own it, so I can't really share anything from that update, although I will point out, as far as I understand, I think it cleaned up some presentation and fix some typos, things like that. I don't think it's radically different in any way, because the update is still considered 2nd edition Traveller, and we're going to be taking a look at 2nd edition Traveller. So keep that in mind. All right, swing on over to the other camera, because first we're going to take a peek into characters in combat. And one of the cool things about the starter set is that the 2 books are actually the core rules. It wasn't like a slimmed down rules presentation to just introduce you to Traveller. It's Traveller. It's the whole thing. Now, I will point out the fine folks over at Mongoose Publishing did send me the starter set about 3 years ago for me to review, and loved it. I thought it was really, really well done. I gave it a 9 out of 10. And for some reason, I never heard from Mongoose Publishing again. So I guess maybe they didn't like the review, but I love Traveller. I go way back with Traveller, almost to the beginning. Not quite, but almost. And I do want to talk about why I feel if you are in the market for a science fiction role-playing game, why you should really consider picking up Traveller 2nd edition from Mongoose Publishing. All right, so we're going to be taking a peek through the 2 kind of core rule books that were in the starter set. And I'm going to talk about various different things. You're probably going to find yourself looking at pages that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about, so just keep that in mind. So Traveller originally came out in 1977 from Game Designers Workshop. I got to say, I used to pick up tons of GDW games, both war games and, of course, Traveller content. I picked up the little black box, which I think was an updated black box, which had the 3 core Traveller books, which were little digest-sized books. I picked that up in 1981 when I was in high school, and I still remember where I picked it up. I got it at a game store that my friends and I would frequent that was in Chicago. It was called the Sutler's Wagon, and it was great. It was a game store before we had game stores, and it actually had everything. So we had, regular board games and war games, role-playing games, a lot of Avalon Hill stuff, a lot of GDW stuff. And I want to say, I think Traveller was either the 4th or 5th role-playing game I ever took a peek at. And I thought, wow, you know what? This is actually very different. It was very different than anything I had checked out before. So one of the things that most people are probably familiar with, or they've heard about Traveller, is the character creation process. And the fact that your character could get killed in character creation. Now, to be honest, that would happen more often in classic Traveller than it will in 2nd edition Traveller from Mongoose. And it's still here. It's more of an option, though. And I want to say, a lot of times, I think the characters got killed in the character creation process more because players were really pushing the limits. Because the way the character creation is done is you have 4-year blocks that take place, and your character is is in the midst of a career or doing something, and usually it's going to get them additional skill points, or it's going to increase an attribute. Maybe it gets them gear or cash credits. So they gain something from that 4 years. But the thing is, you would have people who would be like, oh, well, oh, yeah, I'm going to keep pushing it. I'm still going to be like 60 years old when I begin my adventuring career. And then, of course, they would have a much higher chance of actually rolling some sort of an accident or something along those lines, which would end up getting their character killed. So I know it's a trope. I think it's overplayed a little bit. So one of the cool things about character creation with Traveller, as I was just talking about, you have these 4-year blocks. But a cool aspect of that is that you actually have a built-in backstory when your character is ready to start adventuring. Because you've got these 4-year blocks of experience, and you can have multiple different careers. You can have one career. There are military careers or scientific careers. You could be a prisoner for 4 years. Pretty wild. Actually, you could be a prisoner for far longer than 4 years. But I love the fact that you have these just little tidbits for you to draw upon that are going to give your character's backstory. And it's always recommended, at least with the second edition, that you create your characters together with the other players, because there are ways to gain bonuses by building relationships with other characters. So one aspect of Traveller that I love is the fact that the core mechanic, as far as action resolution, is very, very simple for players to wrap their heads around. At its heart, you're going to take 2 6-sided dice. You're going to have modifiers from attributes or skills. Usually they're bonuses. You may have a penalty. That is a possibility. So you're going to roll your 2 6-sided dice. You're going to add them together. You're going to use those modifiers, and you're looking to score 8 or higher. Here I've got a 9. Hooray! And you succeed. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a skill check or a check against an attribute. Could be melee combat, ranged combat, doesn't matter. You're rolling those 2 6-sided dice using your modifiers, 8 or higher. Now, of course, the game master can change that target number. If something's going to be very easy, they can lower it. If something's more difficult, they can raise it. But for the most part, your target number is usually going to be 8. And at its core, that is the mechanic that players are going to utilize in Traveller. Another highlight of second edition Traveller is the gear and all the stuff that's available, even just in the core rulebook. So we've got various different weapons. We've got augmentations. We've got, like cyberpunk augmentations. We've got vehicles. We've got personal equipment, starships. There is a lot packed into just the core rulebook itself. And, of course, there are loads and loads of supplements that are out there as well that are going to add more gear, more species of aliens, and just more Traveller goodness on top of what you would find just in the core book. Something I also really dig about this edition of Traveller is that we have a lot of graphics, which was not the case in classic Traveller way back in the day. You really didn't have any artwork. So I will point out that there are multiple editions of Traveller that are out there, and it can be very confusing for people as well. And of course, we have the second edition of Traveller from Mongoose Publishing, which is what we're looking at here. What I'm telling you, you really should look into if you are interested in a science fiction role-playing game. But this is not actually the second edition of Traveller. Like I told you, it's going to be confusing for some folks out there. Second edition Traveller came out decades ago. So this is the second edition from Mongoose Publishing. Now we also have the creator of Traveller, has his own Traveller. Many people refer to it as Traveller 5. We also have the Cepheus engine, which utilizes the core Traveller mechanics, but it is not considered to be Traveller. So you're confused already, which is fine. Now, one thing that actually plays into second edition Mongoose Traveller's favor is you can utilize a ton of other stuff that is not second edition Traveller. So you can easily port the Cepheus engine adventures or supplements into second edition Traveller with very little muss or fuss. So that's pretty cool. So that's the first book. We'll take a look at the second book. Now, there is a misconception that Traveller can be very complex, that it is a lot of math involved, a lot of spreadsheets, that you got to be a bean counter to really enjoy Traveller. And that is not the case. But if you start getting into the nitty-gritty of building starships, starship design, as far as trading, starship operations, and the cost of operating starships or spaceships or whatever you want to consider it, spacecraft, then you start getting into some math. Now, the player characters normally are kind of like troubleshooters. So the reason why the role-playing game is called Traveller is that's what the player characters are. They're travelers. Now, they might travel throughout the galaxy, and they're traders. They're mercantile merchants, right? But they're still going to be involved in various different adventures. But one aspect that I find works really well for Traveller is if you're trying to kind of simulate sort of a Firefly kind of role-playing game. I'm not necessarily saying Firefly itself, but something along the lines of that, where you've got this crew, this team of characters. They've got a starship, and they're always just kind of squeaking by, almost a little Cowboy Bebop as well. So I think Traveller works well if you're looking to tell those kind of stories, have those kind of adventures. I know people who use Traveller as the core rules for Cyberpunk. Other people out there use Traveller as the basis for space opera as well, more like a Star Wars kind of campaign or kind of genre. I will point out that I find Traveller tends to skew a bit more toward hard science fiction than space opera. Now, I'm not saying that this is a hard science fiction role-playing game, because the default setting really isn't. The Third Imperium setting isn't really a hard science fiction, but it's also not a galaxy that's just populated by thousands and thousands of alien races. That the setting of the Third Imperium has a certain number of intelligent species out there that player characters can encounter or actually have characters who are part of. But once again, I don't even really see this as Star Trek, because Star Trek tends to have so many different alien races as well. But that's one of the aspects that I think is a selling point for Traveller, is that you can modify this so easily for just about any sort of science fiction genre you want to play. It's better for some as opposed to others, but for the most part, you can kind of plug this in a lot of different respects to whatever style of science fiction you're looking to role play. So just wanted to share what a couple of these books do look like. Might as well show you a bit of Fall of T'Nath, which is also from the starter set, and this is kind of a campaign, kind of giving you an idea of the adventures, which is another selling point to Traveller, and that is that you have decades of Traveller adventures you can draw from. Not only what's published by Mongoose Publishing. I also know of people out there who use Stars Without Number as far as their planet creation and their alien species creation. Because interestingly enough, I think the genre that I find Traveller probably is the weakest at role-playing is like Star Trek exploration, right? To go where no one has gone before. I think Traveller's a little weak on that. And I think mainly because when you're creating planets, you can end up with these really bizarre combinations for planets as far as the various different aspects of the planets. So I have heard many people utilize Stars Without Number for generating alien world for Traveller. And of course, I say it all the time, game masters worth their salt crib from everywhere they can. They steal from everywhere for their own game tables. So just to kind of give you an idea of what an adventure from Mongoose Publishing for Traveller second edition would look like. Pretty cool. We'll point out that the Third Imperium setting, at least in my opinion, is a little generic. It's a little dry. It's a little dryly presented, but that's kind of a Traveller thing. If you had an opportunity to take a look at the original Traveller books or even original Traveller adventures that came out, very to the point, pretty dryly presented. We have a lot more personality to second edition Traveller from Mongoose Publishing than we did with GDW Traveller. But still, it's a little different as far as presentation compared to other role-playing games from other publishers out there. But once again, I think Traveller second edition from Mongoose Publishing is really, really well done. And once again, you can play nearly any genre of science fiction role-playing with Traveller. Now, there is something I do want to mention, and unfortunately, it's just something that just goes with the territory with Mongoose, and that is their releases tend to be pricey. Even their PDFs tend to be pretty pricey. Now, normally, you're going to get a lot of content packed into those books or those PDFs, usually. On occasion, I have heard people complain about really not feeling like they got value for a particular release. But for the most part, normally you're going to see pretty good value, especially with role-playing games. I talk about this a lot, that role-playing games, yes, they have gotten more and more expensive over the past 2-3 years. But think of how much gaming you're getting out of these role-playing game releases. It's still a pretty fair trade. Having said that, if you're interested in checking out Traveller, there is an Explorer's Edition PDF. It is available over at DriveThruRPG. It is $1. It clocks in around 74 pages, and it has the complete rules, but it focuses on scouts and scientists. So you're not going to have a bunch of like military backgrounds and things like that for you to mess around with. But you can get a very, very good feel for the mechanics, the presentation, how well you think the game might go over with your gang, and you can do that for $1. Can't really miss out on that. Pretty good deal. Something else I do want to point out is if you're interested in Traveller second edition from Mongoose Publishing, keep your eyes peeled on Bundle of Holding and Humble Bundle, because occasionally you will see money-saving bundles available on either one of those sites where you can get a bunch of the core books for Traveler Second Edition far, far less than you would paying for the PDFs over at, say, DriveThru RPG. So, like I said, keep your eyes peeled for that as well. All right, so there you have it. That is why I think you should play Traveler Second Edition from Mongoose Publishing. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload original videos such as this, it'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for tuning in and hanging out with me. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.